Hello and welcome to Both is Good, a podcast where DMs, GMs, lore keepers, and anyone who runs tabletop games talk to each other about how they run their games. I'm Adam, and I've been running my games mostly by the book.
And I'm Siera, and I hate math.
And this is a nice opportunity for us to just pick each other's brains about various ways we run our D&D 5e games and for us to just hang out.
The old hangout.
Yeah. But I mean, we're hanging out a little bit more, kind of, in a weird Elden Ring. Like, you stream and I'll, like, chill and just, like, doing games and stuff recently.
That's nice. It's very nice.
Yeah. But yeah, how has your week in D&D been? And I guess maybe before we get to our, like, personal anecdotes, just to date today's episode, the trailer for the D&D movie came out today.
It came out today, and it actually looks good.
It does. It's got a very Guardians of the Galaxy feel in just the trailer to it.
There are already like moments that I want to talk about with people, like when the druid transforms into the owlbear and just takes everyone out, and one of the other characters is just like, what do you call that thing again?
Yeah.
And the mimic, like, licking the wall as they...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the attention to that, like, sticky pseudopod. The mimic.
Yes. Yes. I'm excited.
Yeah.
We gotta wait so long.
What's that?
We have to wait so long.
Oh, I didn't even look at the release date.
March 2023.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's a ways away. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
Yes. But outside of that, how's D&D been for you this week?
Oh, man.
Or last 2 weeks?
The farthest back game was the podcast session, which was a roller coaster of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be episode 50, 51, I think. And it was like lackadaisical happy, and then like existential dread.
Yeah.
And then like, oh shit. And then like, houseboat.
Yeah. Yeah, that episode kind of went everywhere, huh?
It really did.
Well,
It was a hard one for me as a lore keeper. I don't know if you could tell as a player, but it was hard.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot going on.
Yeah. You played it to a point where I didn't feel like it was hard for you.
That's good.
But I'm always here if you did feel like it was difficult. If there's like any ways to make it less difficult.
I'm one of those people where it's like, I don't realize my feelings about something when I'm in it.
Mm-hmm.
I realize them after.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't feel hard as it was happening, which is why you probably wouldn't noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt hard. I felt like I needed to get a lot of things in. And then, yeah, you were there. Just like some... I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but like, there's like sitting back and allowing interjections into your world that counteract the lore that are fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also ones that like you don't really like.
Yeah.
And you're like, do I stop this session right now to correct my players and let them know that like, actually this would never happen in my world? Or do I just let that happen? And in a non-recording session, I probably would have stopped, but I just feel this pressure for like continuity in those sessions, like fluidness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely something I'm sure will come up in this show at some point. We're talking about that because it's also a way different pressure of doing that, like in a podcast game as opposed to a non-podcast game and as opposed to an in-person game, you know? I think like all three of those have different levels of being able to be comfortable in stopping the game that are different and
Yeah.
And like they have different pressures as to whether you would or wouldn't. It's hard to navigate as a DM.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Then the only other game I've played was the Wednesday game yesterday. And it was really fun. We had a player missing. We've had a player missing for the past 2 sessions. And that group in particular does not want to do anything meaty if someone's missing. Like there's a lot of respect to like the group needing to be whole before we make any major decisions. So yeah, they did end up like doing things and like learning things. They just got to a new town, ironically. And they went to like the seedy bar and then realized it was a bar for sex workers, which was really fun and interesting. And then they went to a fancy like fine dining 4-course chef's choice, no menu kind of a restaurant, and I gave them all the links to the recipes.
Whoa.
So one of my players was like, this is really fun, it's an adult tea party, and I was like, yeah.
That's really cool. That's like 2 very different sides of like a world in a single session.
2 very different sides of a town.
Yeah. That's really cool. And I feel you with the players not wanting to do big things if they're missing a player, because I'm currently running into that too in my Friday game, which I guess I will segue into, because I'm playing with one of my players is a father now, and he has a lot of commitments during the summer to be with family and to do things and to connect with people and weddings. And now that he's like married to someone, their family's much bigger and it's more obligations. So summer has been really difficult for him. And so I've been trying to navigate running the game without his player character being there. And I've had to figure out a way to kind of make sense, right, that his character isn't currently active in the party. And I've been talking to my players, and I think we've all agreed to just try to keep going without him being at the table. And he really wants us to keep going without him being at the table. And which is kind of cool. So I've come up with a solution. We're running again this Friday, knock on wood. But everyone said that they can make it. That should be fun. Been running that game for a while. We finally got to an adventure day, which was really cool. Kind of introducing backstory for a new player who came into the campaign, who is playing a Kalishtar. So that's really cool because there's a lot of like really weird Lovecraftian horror that I'm kind of sprinkling into the world that the main party hadn't seen yet. It's only been in one-shots that are in world and connected. But now this new player being a Kalishtar and being, connected to the realm of dreams is like a really cool segue for the party to finally see and start to get those first glimpses of that kind of horror element coming in. And it's tying a bunch of stuff up, and I'm super excited, and I'm having a lot of fun, and they seem to be having a lot of fun. And so I'm super hyped up on the Friday game. And then podcast game is always a blast. I love playing in the podcast game. It's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of cool stuff. And then you showed me new cool stuff that no one else knows about yet and that I can't use yet. But I'm so excited for that to come into play. Just so stoked. I'm excited for like the directions my character can go with that too, which is going to be like really interesting. Sunday game is getting close to being done. Our campaign is like hitting the last couple sessions. The DM like sat and talked to us and was like, hey, it feels like things are really wrapping up. I'm letting you know there's 1, 2, maybe 3 sessions left. And I don't know which one it's going to be. It's going to depend on your decisions. And it feels like we made decisions to very quickly go to the final fight or one of the final fights. So we kind of left off right before starting that last session. So this Sunday is going to be really like, high energy.
That's so sad.
It's sad and it's like fun and it's scary because like there's a lot happening. That game is it's so fun. And it's also really scary because if you go to 0, this is the game with like the really brutal like death and dying rules. So it's very like stressful every time there's combat. Okay.
I want to hear about Digimon Digital Monster Game.
So sadly, that game is on hiatus now.
Aww.
So that game has had a pause. The DM for it finally had some interviews with some job places that he really is excited to try to work in. And he got an interview and he got the job. So he's really focusing on getting the rest of his life, being able to move things so that he could accommodate doing the game and that he could be ready to be starting work too. So for now, it's on pause until he finds like a good time to run the game again. But, it's really good for him.
Your Digimon just did the thing.
Yeah, I mean, Digimon did just do the thing. He just Digivolved for the first time, and now he's... now we're stopping, we're pausing. But that's fine.
That's okay.
That's good. And then I set it to the open space that we're going to cut out because you were gone. But I've started to gauge some interest from a few people on the potential Tuesday game that we might start so you could be a player in a potential online game. But
yes!
So I've reached out to a couple people. Everyone that I reached out to is like, that sounds cool. I want to be part of it. I don't know if I could do it like immediately. And I've been like, well, I don't think it's going to start right away. I still have to get a bunch of stuff up. But now I've been starting to turn the wheels on a general plot. And I've got a good idea of where I want the campaign to take place and what's the general plot line that I want to have in there. So it's really just down to when people are ready and when they want to send me backstories so I could start working those in. And also finding, I think, one more person. So right now I'm at like a potential 3. It's 2 that are like, it's you and one other are pretty pinned down. Seem like they're able to do it. The third one is kind of on the fence, but we'll see. And then if there's like a 4th person that maybe that you want to invite in to it. That way you have someone that in there. That's not me. And that's, another one of the players that you're interacting with at the table for comfort. But,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
And then, was it within the last 2 weeks that we played the Saturday game too?
No, sadly.
Was that 3 weeks ago? Time is meaningless to me right now.
And I still keep thinking that it's happening this weekend, and it's not. It's happening the weekend after.
Yeah.
And you know what is extra funny is I love bubble tea. And there's a place like 4 blocks from me. But in my need to constantly control my life and everything around me, I only allow myself to get bubble tea when we play that game as like a special treat.
Yeah.
And I really want bubble tea.
I mean,
I could just go get some. I know.
You could go get some. But I understand the control there. And that's, important.
Type
too.
A, baby. You know what? Yeah, I don't want to go down a tangent. I think type A, type B is bullshit, but it's kind of funny to say sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's a joke. Don't at us.
It's a joke. It's a joke. What are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today, Mystic?
Oh yeah, it was my idea. I kind of alluded to it already. But I wanted to talk about creating towns, creating settlements as they're called, and how to do that, what resources there are, what does the DMG say, how to tie it into your story, why do you have to make a town, all those things.
Yeah. So I'm going to level. When you first said this, I was like, yes, let's do this. And I was like, it's going to blow me out of the water on this one. There's no way I'm doing this by the books. Like, I don't think I'm doing. And then I read the books. I'm like, I'm 100% doing this exactly by the books.
Even I use the books on this.
Yeah. This is wild. This is why I think like the book kind of like it succeeds really well in the limited fashion that it does this.
It does. And okay, we can just dive in. So in the DMG, I have D&D Beyond, so I don't know what page it is exactly, but it's chapter 5, adventure environments. There's an actual, look at me, we're swapping roles.
Yeah.
There's this whole section about random settlements. Yeah. And it says you can create a settlement quickly. Assume you've already determined its size and its basic form of government. So we're not going to dive into the government part, but I think we should dive into the size part a little bit. And, oh baby, this could be a whole thing. Like, this is like a whole thing within world building that I just want to briefly touch on because we might get sucked into the hole that is how to determine the size. Mm-hmm. And my reasoning for this is I think about the size of a town based on the resources that are able to supply that town. Mm-hmm. Right? So Florencia is the seat of power within Ebknor, the country of Ebknor. But Ebknor is essentially cut off from every other country in Rikmanish by this huge mountain range. And the center of it is a fucking comet desert from where my Siera fell from the sky. So the only places that can have settlements are essentially the coastal regions and a little bit north of the desert in like the bitter north, think like Alaska or northern Canada. And then it's just mountain range on the other side, like not like the Appalachians, like the fucking Himalayas, right? Like a mountain range. And so knowing that and knowing like the region that this is emulating, when I build a settlement, I have to think about one of two things. How are they being fed? Because food issues are important when you have limited regions for agriculture. How is trade flowing? Because there's really only one main road that connects all the cities because there's a fucking desert in the center of the country. And how are those trade routes protected? Who gets into those? Who fucks with them? Who controls them? In Ebknor, it's a utopia, so there's not a lot of crime. There's like bandits and things, but normally like they're taken care of pretty swiftly because the government allocates dollars towards getting rid of them. So that's kind of where I start. Florencia is a port town, so they have a lot of access. They have the castle, they have kingdom. It's also where all the refugees came from the 100-Year War, right? Because of the mountain range, Ebknor was kind of protected, or so the legend says. And this was a place for refugees. So definitely the seat of power, the largest population is in that space. The other place y'all have gone is Wimston, which is a 100% agricultural town in northern Ebknor, not close to the water. It's one of the only non-coastal cities. So their settlement size is rather small. There's only one road in, and there's like tiny roads up to like other homesteads and things. But because they're an agrarian society there, they only need enough people that they can feed and then ship the rest out, right? Am I getting too far in the weeds here?
I mean, if you're enjoying talking about it, I'm enjoying listening. Like, you're good. I'm learning a lot about Ebknor. It's good.
Yeah. The other two towns, which the podcast game hasn't gotten to, Mortworth and Caprice. Mortworth is the second closest to Florencia. It's like the vacation spot of the country. It's not directly on the coast. It's about a half an hour walk to the coast from the town. It's a little bit removed. And I live in Oregon. I know you are very familiar with Oregon. I think of it as like Newport, Cannon Beach, like artsy towns with tourism, lots of money, like those kinds of towns. And if you want me to cut that, I totally will, because I did not realize what I had just done.
Oh yeah, I don't live there anymore, but I definitely did live in Newport for a time. I definitely go to the Oregon coast, theater camp in Newport, Oregon, in the summers. But I agree that it's an artsy, cool coastal town, and I like,
So their money comes from that, artisan shops, and they have a little bit of like more of the seedy underbelly because artists have to be paid somehow. Wealthy people from Florencia go there and own property there and own businesses there. But the residents the townies are just like, I'm a glass blower. I'm a fisherman. I go crabbing. Like all of those kinds of things. So it's very different. The size is larger than Wimston, but is constantly fluctuating. And so anyone who's like a permanent NPC there has a very specific role within the community. And then Caprice is the barrier town to the mountains from Florencia into Bumelda and Synthgrab. It's a tiny dot on the map. It is so small. It's rough terrain, and it's hard to grow things. People just go through. Mm-hmm. Think of it as like a Route 66 town. And so that's how I kind of determine the size of the settlement.
It's
what's there
by resources and like by its geographical area.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Which isn't something the DMG ever like talks about. So they just say, here's some tables once you know what and where your thing is.
Well, I will say you're pointing out that's true, that there is something there in settlements, but that's under the bigger header of adventure environments on the DMG. There's a second place in the DMG where it talks about settlements, which is under the A World of Your Own section. Where they talk about settlements, and it reads, the places where people live, bustling cities, prosperous towns, and tiny villages nestled among miles of farmland help define the nature of civilization in your world. A single settlement, a home base for your adventures, is a great place to start a campaign and begin your world building. Consider the following questions when you create any settlement in your world. Well, what purpose does it serve in your game? How big is it? Who lives there? What does it look, smell, and sound like? Who governs it? Who holds powers? Is it part of a larger state? What are its defenses? Where do the characters go to find goods and services they need? What temples and organization features prominently? And what fantastic elements distinguish it from an ordinary town? And finally, why should characters care about your settlement? Mm-hmm. And then it gives you a guideline in a section that kind of just talks about all of those things.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's where it kind of like goes down. It's like, the settlements, this is like the sentence that I always go on. And that, it's like a settlement exists primarily to facilitate the story and the fun of your campaign. Other than that point, the settlement's purpose determines the amount of detail you put into it. Create only the features of a settlement that you'll need, along with notes on general features. Then allow it to grow organically as the adventures interact with more and more of it, keeping notes on the new places you invent. And there's another section in that like chapter 5 settlement section that you're talking about, which is like the second paragraph of it, where it's like, when creating a settlement for your campaign, focus on the locations that are most relevant to the adventure. Don't worry about naming every street and identifying the inhabitants of every building. That way lies madness.
Yes.
And it's just that line. The don't overthink your town. You'll go mad. Is like, it's so perfect that the DMG does that.
Yep. I 100% agree with that. The only thing that I think that I maybe do differently is I thought about all of this, all that shit I just talked about.
Yeah.
In creating the map for my world, which for those of you who aren't Patreon subscribers and don't see all the art that I post and credit to the beautiful artists of the world, maybe don't realize, but I am like a very visually inspired person. I need to see it to make it real, to better understand it. And so when I started making Rick Monish and then Abcanor, well, I made Abcanor first actually, and then Rick Monish, I had to map it out. Like I had to see it. So I placed these cities on the map and then thought about them and made them grow. And so no one in the history of me running games in Rick Monish, has ever been to Corprise as a player character. But I don't have all the other stuff that we're going to talk about done for that city. But I at least have like an idea of what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
Like so if an NPC is from there, or if someone asks about it, I have, like there's some information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the way that I go about it is, I think, so there's a couple different ways that it works. Right now, the town that they're in is a town that one of my players had their character start in. So that player described the generals of the town, created the two like key locations of the town, which was like the temple to their god and the ruler's castle that was there, and then said, I want this town to be known for 3 things. I want it to be known for its barrel mines, its barrels of whiskey, and its lion taming. And that's the town. Like, and so that's kind of like this reference that I make when I'm making towns. And I'm like, what is this town known for? So one of the ones that I built was a town called Rockreach Crossing, which is a town that has a bridge that crosses the river that connects the Shisi dynasty to the Dragonspire Mountains. And so it's Rockreach Crossing. So it's known for its giant bridge, its monumental library, and being the border town where kind of the rules of the dynasty and the rules of the Dragonspire nation kind of commingle. And so it's not as heavily regulated as other towns.
Yeah.
And then everything else that happens there is kind of dependent on the characters when they get there. And they're like, well, is there this here? Is there that there? And gives me the flexibility to put in like some set pieces that might be interesting to the backstory or to the story as a whole as they get there.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that plan. So any city that I've prepped, even Florencia, like there was no coffee shop in Florencia until the ha ho ho and a bottle of rum one shot, right?
Right.
Like I made up both Stranger Danger, Stranger Coffee, and Bookish Brow on the spot in that one shot. And then remembered that I had stats for a coffee dragon and was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I to segue, what are your like go-to establishments that you think the DM or OGM should prep in a new city when they're creating it?
I think in a new city, if it is like a city that the characters are going to stay in, right? If it's like an important city, I think it's important to have like an inn or a place for them to stay and to have that like prepped a little bit beforehand. And outside of that, like have one spectacular shop of some sort. Like have something that the town's known for prepped. And just so you have those two things, maybe if like, especially if divinity is playing a role in your campaign, like have a church or an established religious group set up. And then like I think that's like the basics of what you would have set up. And then, it kind of depends on what your backgrounds are for your characters. Like if you have a criminal background and they have a criminal contact, then it's important that you also have the criminal contact kind of set up and placed there. And that's where like backgrounds and character backstories come more into play. So I don't think I flesh out a lot of my towns at all until I know what characters are in the story. So otherwise I'd prepare a million things and half of them would never be seen and I'd succumb to the madness that the book warns you about, Yeah. So I think preparing an inn, preparing the like story reason why they're in the settlement. Like if they're just passing through, you don't need to prep that. But if they're going to the town for a reason, you got to prep that building and the people there and why they're there. Or if they're not there, you have to, kind of prep the mystery around why they're not there. And that's also kind of cool,
Yeah, I agree. I always prep an inn in a shop. Well, I kind of like cheated on that one. Because there's the Pimpleton Brothers General Store, which is a chain of general stores in every town.
Yeah. I cheat on that as well. So
send people there.
Yeah.
And then I do kind of at the start, that's where I start. Mm-hmm. For Abkanor specifically, I know that every town, every settlement will have a temple of my Siera, mm-hmm. who I should maybe have just like the name of the person that runs it. Like mm-hmm. that's a good idea. And then a town hall. Every city will have a town hall. And I actually don't fuck with the NPCs in the town hall unless they're important to the overarching story. I just say that there is one and there's a bounty board in front of it, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I think you do that I definitely don't do. That would add more to the prep is the bounty boards. So, like, do you prep a bounty board for every town? Like, before the players go to the town? Or do you just, like... Do you prep a bounty board based on level and then just have different bounty boards for levels that you just paste in the towns that they go to?
Oh my god, this is a whole topic on its own.
Yeah, maybe we could save this one for...
I'll do a little teaser, topic. But okay. It's a little bit of both. So if it's like Florencia, which is sort of like the hub of the campaign, there are bounties by level. So... But that's mostly because the focal points of the story fluctuate around. And it's kind of natural for the party to just, okay, we finished this. We need to go back here kind of a thing and circulate back through. And so time has passed. Normally a significant amount of time has passed. I'm going to stop there because if I say more, we'll get into it. But like that's kind of how it is. Yeah, it's by town, sense. And then I changed them, like you said, to fit the party. So, like, the bounties from the very first time I ever ran that campaign are very different from the bounties that the podcast group will interact with, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, I think the one exception to this rule of preparing a town was the very first town that I had them set up in, or the town that I consider home base, right? So in my world, in this campaign that I'm running, the home base is a town called Bridgeport, which is a very large city. Like, it's a huge population. It's a port town. I actually based a lot of it off of Newport as well.
Nice.
Just for building it. Because it's called Bridgeport, and it has this massive bridge that has, like, depictions of divinity on it. And it's a very, like, spiritual-centered town that's also a big tourist town. And so because it was going to be a home base for a big section of the beginning of the game, I went through more meticulously and I created a couple additional shops, and I have like this board of characters that exist there, specifically because like the first session was them joining an organization. So I had them essentially join an adventurers guild of sorts in my world. And so I had to create all of the characters or the key characters that would be guiding them through that process of joining. So I had to create like the hierarchy of that organization and who does what and why they do that and how the characters would interact with them going in, and the other NPCs that would be trying to join the guild as well next to them, you know, because it was like this big event. And so I think that's like the only time I would ever over prep or prep more for a town than what we talked about before, is when it's home base. Because then whenever they come back, they have all of those characters that they've met before who are still going to be there. And it creates that like sense of consistency and a world that's evolving and growing, but still like there for them.
Yeah. And you'll notice this about like the podcast group. Florencia, as an expansion of this, like when I'm creating my settlements, like I said, will roll on these random settlements tables because I like them. Yeah. I don't have to worry about race relations because Utopia doesn't have any racial stereotypes or biases. I don't normally care about ruler status either because all the villages, although they have their own councils, are loyal to the crown, and it's a utopia. So
Yeah.
It's just not normally a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't care about notable traits normally because that's already dictated by what I talked about earlier. But I do like the current calamity rolling table. And this is like 100% evident in Wimpston as a town. When I first made that town, I rolled on this table. And I think there's one about an angry mob. I don't see it on here. That's sad. Definitely rolled on a DMG table and got random angry mob. So I was like, oh, okay, this is a city in conflict. I know that the main story here revolves around these key NPCs from this list of gods, but the town itself also has to be dynamic. Like, it can't be a one-sided thing. So let's bring in the gnolls. Not only is it a fun red herring, it's also something that the town is passionate about and plays into these missing people of my Siera, which I hadn't put those thoughts together yet, right? Like, I was like, I know that I want this goddess of love to be stealing people, but I don't, like, I hadn't even gotten to the point of thinking about the town's reaction. And I was like, oh, this one roll on this one table opened up all these possibilities for me within this town. And that's why I really love them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Like, that's the best part of those tables, you know, is just when you need that like little spark and you could roll on it. And suddenly it's like, all the ideas come in. I will say that I, for the most part, don't roll on the current calamity unless the town is going to be the adventure that I'm doing. Because just like specifically for my world, I like to have that feeling that towns are safe. Like, unless there's like a specific adventure or a reason why the town would become unsafe, which has happened a couple times in my campaign, you know, kind of going against that rule that I'm kind of set for it. But like, I want the towns to be where you're safe, because the wilderness is where all of the danger is in my world. So if you're in town and you're staying there, things are going to be fine. Like, if anything happens in the town, which things can happen, it'll be settled quickly because the people are used to that and they'll respond to it. And I'm, you know, my setting's also like really high fantasy artificer run section of the world. So they have all of the technology and magic to like deal with that. But like, as soon as you leave the walls, like, I like there to be that sense of almost dread of like, you're leaving somewhere safe. So the towns will often not have these bad things happening, or if they do, it'll be settled really quick. And then the danger is outside, or the dungeons are.
That's so interesting.
Which is also way different than my Sunday game, where the entire campaign is taken place in a single town.
Is it like a city?
Really cool. Yeah, it's a huge, like, multi-leveled tiered city.
Whoa.
It's been...
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I will say that I rolled on the ruler status table for one of the towns. I'm not going to say which one.
Okay.
When I created that one as well. And that was like the spark that I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things with settlements, though, other than like buildings, are NPCs. Do you start with like the story you're telling at this? Well, you just said that like the settlements are like so interesting.
Yeah.
How do you prep your NPCs that in the town?
I think that's a different topic.
That's true. I'm just so curious.
I prep them one character at a time. Like, without going into detail of how I prep them, when I'm prepping a town that people are going to, I will grab an NPC and I will design it before they get to the town. I will design the important NPCs, and then I don't have the right book in front of me, but I essentially, like, in my book have just a baseline of kind of blank characters with traits and voices. And then when they go to a town, I will flip to that page that has the name, the race, the voice, and the identity of that person. And then I plug them into that occupation in that place and have them be that person that I need them to be. So in a sense, like, I have a bunch of NPCs sitting in the wings that whenever your player characters, inevitably go like, "Oh, sir, random guard, what's your name?" I just turn to that page and I'm just like, yeah, it's Flint. Flint the halfling who has like a nasty scar on his face. And then, it'll all be improv, because my favorite thing is improv. I improv it all. And the best part about improv is, as long as you're confident, no one knows that you didn't have it prepped the whole time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all improv, baby. I mean, I've legitimately told you, let's play a one-shot today. It's going to be 100% improv. And we've done it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the best part. It starts as improv, and then as soon as it happens, as soon as you say it, it just becomes law, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's the best part, Yeah.
Hell yes.
You don't have to have it all planned. You just have that idea, and then when your players inevitably go against your idea, you just have to be like, yes, there is a gnome in the corner. I also Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to bring up something that I don't know if it's a topic on its whole own or what episode would make sense for me to bring up, but I have developed Thieves' Cant for my world. So I have one character who knows Thieves' Cant, so we sat down one day and we just created a coded language for Thieves' Cant. So now we don't like say I speak Thieves' Cant. We actually talk to each other in Thieves' Cant when he's doing it.
What the fuck?
It's so cool.
I love that.
It's so fun.
Is it like, let's make every R a W and every L a T kind of thing? Or is it?
It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
It's kind of code. We talk about something that seems innocuous, but we know what we're saying actually means, kind of idea. I don't want to reveal it on the podcast.
No.
Because I might have one of my players listening to this, and I don't want to teach the ones who don't know Thieves' Cant. So our monk accidentally spoke Thieves' Cant for a little bit, but had no idea what they were saying. It's beautiful when it happens in session.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a huge tangent.
No, it's okay. The only other thing that I think maybe we should speak to about creating a settlement, regardless of of whether or not you're utilizing this to set your the size of your settlement or their occupation or whatever. Unless you're in the Midwest, there's something in your town, like normally life is created and or settled near water. They're not gonna unless they're really industrious, they're not gonna build their homes off the side of a fucking cliff. There's things to be thought about there, and sure, there probably is a campaign where you've created a society and a culture and a lore where they could build homes off the side of a cliff, but do they then rejoice if there's an earthquake and everything falls to the there's a lot. Maybe others don't dive that deep into it, but that's the level of thought that I put into the creating of a town.
Yeah, I agree. Most of my towns are built right on rivers.
Yeah.
In this world, I know in my current setting, there could be a town that's not that, because alchemists could just make alchemy jars and decanters of endless water, and clerics could just create food, and so in a world of magic where some of the magic is creating fresh food and water, there's never really food or water shortages, but people still farm because the food and water that's created are really bland, and people like to have better tasting food,
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But and the same point, now that you say it, like I want to have like a town that's set up on an edge of a mountain and just have an earthquake happen and that be one of the adventures.
I said that and I was like,
that's really cool. Like, why don't we make that? That seems cool. That seems fun.
Yeah, maybe they're Anyway.
Natural disasters as an antagonist. Very underutilized, I think.
Tsunami.
Yeah.
On your houseboat.
Uh-oh.
I'm just kidding.
Safest place to be is, further out in the ocean when a tsunami happens.
I don't know these things.
Swept out. What's that?
I'm from the Midwest.
Oh, yeah. We learned about it a lot growing up, a mile from the ocean.
Yeah. Every time we drive to the coast and I see like tsunami evacuation zone signs, I think to myself, I would have no fucking idea what to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Living and doing those drills, the drills are essentially, kids, the earthquake that's going to cause the tsunami is going to create a big sinkhole right here because we're built on top of the sand and you're going to die anyway. But, in case you don't, you're supposed to go up this hill about 30 feet and, maybe you'll be out of the way. Just got to dodge the down power lines on your way up so you don't get fried. That was a high school pep talk we had during a tsunami drill.
You know what? We should talk about this later.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry
that
for
was
dropping
okay.
that.
No, it's good.
Other people had like tornado drills and we had tsunami drills.
That's what I had. And you know what it was? It was, let's go into this closet or, and go into the hallway, the most interior, and like cover our heads.
Yeah.
And like that actually might keep you safe in a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came out here, I moved out here, and then I was like, I know there are earthquakes. I feel like I should know what to do if there is the big one. And then I asked one of my coworkers from California and like a few other people from around here, and they were like, oh yeah, you're just supposed to like get under a desk or something. I'm like,
yeah, you're supposed to just help you curl up in a ball next to something sturdy and you hope. Yeah, you just pray. Essentially is what it is. You stand in a doorway and you pray.
That's what my coworker from California was like, yeah, I don't know. You're supposed to stand in a doorway because it's the most reinforced part of your house. Don't at me, all right?
Yeah. Well, that's just what we were told. Like, that's legit. Like, they had new information each year, and each year the information would be changed by something else. The fact is, we don't know. Sorry. We're going to segue.
We're going to get off this tangent. Yeah.
Has nothing to do with town building.
It doesn't, but you can use a natural disaster. Yeah.
Dude, your adventure could just be your party rolls into town on the day of the tsunami drill.
You're all going to die if this happens. Yeah. Anyway.
Stay calm and walk up the hill.
Is it time for blesses and banes?
Yeah. Blesses and banes. I muted myself on accident.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Blessing, pain.
I don't know what we're blessing and baning here.
Yeah, I know. We're
pretty. I think we're on the same wavelength as far as
are.
Settlement building goes, which is cool because we honestly.
There is a bane.
Oh, it's the bane.
The bane is don't over create.
Yes. I mean, that's just our biggest tip. Don't overcreate. It's very easy to do. It's very easy to think that your town has to be as specific as like the town you grew up in.
No.
Don't do that. You'll succumb to madness.
Only create what you think your players will touch and then improv everything else and write down the names of the places in your notebook when you do it.
And if you're someone who doesn't like improving or feel like you need like a crutch for improv, tell your players that when they're investigating a town. Just call everyone who's not the main character Tim.
You can use these random building tables in the random settlements section.
Yes, that's a big bless here, is the random
That's
table.
a bless.
I will say it's a universal bless that I'm going to say in every episode from here on out. Every time that we're talking about something that has a table, those tables are blessings.
Sometimes I make my own tables.
Yeah, you can make your own tables. Just roll on a table. It sparks so much creativity that you don't even consider beforehand.
I think what's really funny, though, is like in this section of random buildings, it says pulse-pounding chases and harrowing escapes within the confines of a city or town can sometimes force characters to dash into buildings. And then the first table under that is building type. And you roll a d20, and then 4 out of the 5 choices on that table then say, okay, now roll on this additional table on a different page.
Yep.
And then here's like a residence and like 4 other tables to help you flesh out what's happening in these places. And it's like, there's no time for that. You just need to know what it is.
Yeah.
Or if you want to like take a break and roll on all of them to like really flesh out the building, you can do that too. But like Adam and I, we really like improv. So like if I were to utilize this, I'd probably just roll to figure out what type of building it is and then go from there.
Yeah. The way I see this being used, because it says it in like the chase scenario, is like because also like these tables are initially like they can be multi-use. You could use them to build your town, or you could use them for an adventure town, but they're put in here as like an adventure town, right?
Yeah.
So a town that's like not safe that you're doing something in. So in their idea, you're having a chase, and the person's like chasing after you. You have your building to your left and to your right, and then you roll on the dice. The table on your left is a tavern, and the one on the right seems to have religious imagery on it. Which direction do you go? And then once they choose the direction, then you look on that table. It's like you go into the shop and you see these things, which tell you that it's this kind of shop. But you're like making these snap decisions because you're in the middle of a chase, which also has really cool rules. If you haven't looked at chase rules, look at them. They're awesome.
They're cool.
I love them. I utilize them in my game a lot.
All right. Everything else is a blessing.
Yeah.
Like, you can't go wrong with the town. Like literally it can be whatever you want it to be. It can be built on top of lava and all of the buildings just float around.
Yeah. But you just have to make sure that it serves a purpose and that you have that in the forefront of your mind when your party goes there. Or else it's really easy to get lost in the sauce.
That's even if the purpose is just like getting through and resting, having a nice meal and going to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
If the purpose of the town is to just have a fun night for your adventurers, then the thing you have to prep is just like there's a town fair, or, you know, there's the bar is having a karaoke night this night. The drinks are half off. It's a good time.
I can't wait for that one.
Yeah. Should be good. So yeah, town building's great.
Town building's fun.
And we don't really have like a both for this one. So I think we both do similar things.
Yeah, but both of our thoughts are good.
They are. They're both good. Wait, so is that the end? Did we say that?
No, anyway, follow us on socials. We got Twitter and Instagram, and we post stuff on the Autumn Moon Studios TikTok account. Subscribe to our Patreon. Why should they subscribe to our Patreon, Adam?
If you subscribe to our Patreon, you get early access to the... Mystic, please. Oh, I'm blanking. What's the name? What's the Utopia? You get early access to Utopia episodes. I was ready for this. This is fine. You get access to like screenshots, to extra
softball.
art. You did. It was like the biggest softball, and I was not expecting it. And it just like it lobbed in front of my face, and I stared at it as it hit my toes. And it's fine. You get early access to Utopia podcast episodes. You get behind the scene looks at character sheets and character art, and just a ton of really cool stuff that Mystic's been working on. If you join at Radiant Raiders or above, you get access to some of our coolest content, which is our monthly minutes, which are a ton of fun. It's a look behind the screen. It's a Q&A session. You could ask members of the cast anything about the stories up to the point since the last month that we did it. And it's a ton of fun. If you like shows like recap shows for other big D&D shows, you'll like monthly minutes. And it's exclusive to our Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nailed it. Picked that softball back up, hit it out of the park.
Home run, baby.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to both.
Both is good.